inspiration, brave action, and heartwarming journeys. This is what the Louise H. Reed Show brings you. Now, here's your host, Louise H. Reed.
Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me this wonderful Tuesday. I'm your host, Louise H. Reed, with listeners in over 145 countries and millions of iTunes downloads and ongoing podcasts each month. I'm here every Tuesday to explore the incredible journey of amazing people who've truly embraced the notion of taking brave, bold action in pursuit of their dreams and goals. Today's guest is Stayci Keetch. And as always, let me tell you a little bit about her before we hear from her. So Stayci is a fellow Ottawan. That's someone who lives in Ottawa, for those who don't know. We're in Canada. And Stayci is the founder of On Brand, formerly Eyes on Ottawa, brings a balanced, practical, and seasoned approach to marketing for businesses. She knows how to tell an authentic story through video and how your customers will use the web to find what they're looking for. This combination of insight and experience means she can truly help you build relationships with your customers and increase your sales. One thing that I read about Stayci that really captured me that I wanted to share with you is that she said if you are in business and not using video to tell your story, listen on, that in 2021, video traffic will be 82% of all consumer internet traffic. You heard me right, 82%. Building your brand without an intentional video focus will get you closer to a fax machine than an industry leader. So welcome to the show, Stayci.
It's always good to start on fax machine jokes, right?
Well, and I wonder if there might be some listeners who don't even know what fax machines are.
I know.
If that is you, you don't want to be one. So Google it, look it up. You might be able to find it in a history museum, but it's not what you want to be. So tell me a little, let's just jump right on that in there actually. Tell me a little bit about that, because I think that most people in business know that video is a thing, right? And perhaps an important thing. But I didn't know how quite important it was until I read that stat. So give us a little bit more flavor and color to that.
Well, the interesting thing, so what I do is I do mainly business videos. So personal branding and business is my main focus. So I don't do big campaigns that focus on beautiful images and feels and all that sort of stuff. Like I'm not building Macintosh's 1984 commercial, which some of our viewers might have to Google that too. What I do with clients is I find succinct, direct ways to sell to your audience, and using video is a major platform for that. And the interesting reason of that, or the interesting thing about that statistic, is that it's for all of the internet. So it's not 82% of social media will be video, it's 82% of the internet. So that's email, that's, everything that you do on the internet is going to be video. And I think that a lot of people, especially, I'll give a zing, throw some shade to Ottawa, especially in Ottawa, think that it's something that they don't have to do yet. And it's not an early adopter market of video, as where I'll take regular trips to Toronto and they'll be like, okay, yeah, there's a lot of agencies out there who offer all sorts of marketing services except for video. And for me, I started out as a production company that kind of expanded into marketing because that made the most sense. I was having a lot of people come to me and say, I want to do video, but first I need a logo and I need a website and I need to get my messaging all done. And I had to expand in that for two reasons. One, because I'm really good at it. I didn't know that I was really good at it, but it's just a natural thing that I do. But in addition to that, from a business perspective, if someone wanted to come to me for video, but first had to go somewhere else for all those other things, the chances of them meeting other people along the way that didn't have a video guy was pretty low. So for them to be able to make it back to me when they were ready and not find another provider for video, I was losing a lot of clients that way. So I needed to be able to provide them an end-to-end solution at the best value cost. So that's kind of me in a nutshell.
So one of the things that struck me about you that I really love about you And I look for, you and I haven't actually done work together in terms of personal branding for my business, but it's on my list for 2019. Well, and maybe I need to be accelerating that based on the statistic that I just shared with the listeners. But I love you're very real, you're very genuine, you're very cut to the chase. I find your humor really good, and you can just see through to the essence of something really quickly. And so I'm really happy to have made this connection and to be able to share you with my listeners. What I'd like to understand a little bit about now is, you mentioned that you didn't even know you were good at this. So let's rewind the clock a little bit. I'm sure, little Stayci didn't think that you were going to be a personal branding expert for business. So tell us a little bit about how that journey, how this journey has unfolded.
Well, little Stayci wanted to be a background dancer for Janet Jackson. And truth be told, if she asked me, I'd still say yes. So if you're watching, Janet, it's funny that I'm now being rewarded for, and first of all, thank you for saying all those kind things. I wish that there were more people who appreciated that in younger Stayci. And I think there's a lot of literature coming out now about don't use words like don't be bossy to young women. Because I never really thought that this was a path for me. One of the things that and don't get me wrong, my parents were super encouraging, but one of the things that I've heard from as long as I can remember is don't be bold. Stayci, don't be bold. Don't be bold. So it was their way of saying what I was saying wasn't wrong. It wasn't necessarily rude, but it was borderline.
It's just just turn the intensity, or turn the volume down a little bit.
Yeah, don't be such a smartass, because you can't really say that to a 6-year-old, but you can say don't be bold. And now that I have a daughter of my own, I can empathize hugely where my parents were coming from. But I think it was a moment in time, and I think that really, truly only comes from age. And I hated hearing people say that when I was younger. But when you become comfortable in yourself, that you realize that this is me, this is who I am, I'm bold. I'm not someone if you have a problem and I know what the problem is and I know what the solution is, I'm not going to take 25 minutes massaging your feelings in order to get there.
Yeah.
I'm not a coach, I'm a consultant when it comes to problem solving. And there are people out there who love working with coaches, and there's people out there who would rather work with a consultant than a coach. And I think when it comes to marketing advice, I'm definitely more of the consultant delivery than the coach delivery. And I'm okay with that. The great thing about video and how when I started branding myself, no one will ever watch one of my videos and then meet me in person and go, oh, wow, she's way more blunt and straightforward than I thought she'd be. I wasn't expecting that at all. Like it comes across. So
I think what you just even highlighted right there is the importance of video. One example of the importance of video, being able to attract your ideal client in minutes, seconds, really.
And deflect your non-ideal client.
Yeah.
Attracting your ideal client takes longer than deflecting your unideal client, right? So one of the things that I always get up my soapbox, I did a workshop this morning with the local board of trade, and it's production basics, and I didn't get too much into it. There's a whole series on there, but one of the things that is my personal pet peeve is people that do videos in between stuff of their own lives for convenience sake. So people that do videos while walking to the bus stop because it's convenient for them to do it at that moment, yet they're not considering their audience. So, there's buses going by and it's windy and they're letting us know that they had some time in between meetings and they just came out of a client thing. It's like, I don't want to hear that. So by me doing a video telling people not to walk and talk and to respect their audience, I have pissed off several people that do walk and talk videos. And that's just kind of how it is. Whether I'm right, whether I'm wrong, it doesn't really make a difference. I've deflected those people from my audience.
Right.
But it also means that I'm never going to have to sit in front of a client and have an argument and have to explain to them why that's a bad idea.
Right. I think that people who are, smart business people recognize what it is that you're saying and that resonates with them about you want to be working with more of your ideal and less of your non-ideal. Otherwise, your energy goes a lot into the squeaky wheel, right? I'm sure you can attest to that. So I want to go back to little Stayci again for a little bit. So I love the story, even that you were just telling, and I too talk a lot about my parents, and I think that I had the best upbringing ever. I actually had my dad on the show once because he's got some really interesting perspectives on leadership. He ran a nuclear power plant in Pickering in the Toronto area, so he's got lots of experience and stuff. And he even reflected on some of the parenting decisions that he and my mom made that were of that time. And so I like how we can still reflect. We don't have to do parent shaming and parent blaming. That's not what we're doing when we're looking back. But at that time, perhaps when we were growing up, that was, you were to lessen yourself as the girl. So that fire in your belly remained. Tell us a little bit about how that evolved, and then how Bold Stayci started to emerge, and how that helped to form your business.
Bold Stayci never went away.
Let's be clear.
God knows I tried. The joke with my family and people that have known me for so long is that the only person that didn't realize that I should be my own boss was me. Because I had, before I started my company, depends, my best friend since I was 4, we've gone back and forth a few times, and she thinks it's 36 and I say 35.
Okay.
That's how many jobs I had.
Okay.
And to be clear, I only ever got fired from one. So what would happen is I would take a job, and I'm super great at interviews, which I didn't realize was a sales skill until much later on when I started selling. And then I'm like, oh, I'm good at this. It turns out I've been selling myself for years.
Right.
And I'd get into an organization and there'd be a problem, and I would poke at it. And what I like to call like Band-Aid problems. So like a long, long time ago, there was a problem, and then somebody went like this, and somebody else went like this, and somebody else went like this. And now I'm in the position, 15 years later, and everybody has put their own Band-Aid on it. And I come along and I'm like, but what's this? Like the actual problem. And they're like, oh, well, don't just do all the things that we said. And I'm like, I'm kind of like a 6-year-old. I'm like, well, why are we doing it like that? And I need to know. I'm one of those people that needs to know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I can't just blindly do something because you tell me to.
Yeah.
And that's a problem for a lot of managers. And it was a problem for a lot of managers. The problem for the managers, in addition to that, was that I was usually very, very good at my job. So I wasn't really fireable because I was doing excellent work. I was just a giant pain in the ass because I would question every manager I ever had. And some of them saw it as a good thing, some of them not so much. And I never understood why some managers were trying to help me find other jobs.
Hindsight's 2020.
Right? There's actually one that I actually sent an email to when I worked at YTV about 10 years later. And I sent her an apology because I was then in a management position, and I saw what my employees were putting me through. And I could only reflect on what I put her through. And I was like, I just wanted to tell you that I'm sorry for whatever it's worth. But yeah, that whole not needing to be right by any means, but just needing to be heard and needing to know why I was doing what I was doing. As long as somebody told me why, then it was fine. But I couldn't just blindly follow instructions without knowing the end goal.
Yeah, I was once told that I needed to turn my volume down, and they weren't speaking about the volume of my voice. They were talking about just my presence, right? I too asked a lot of questions, and I was even told once, you just need to sometimes do what you're told to do. And
once you were told that? That's impressive. I got told that a lot.
Well, I'm maybe just remembering once. Anyway, yeah. So I can relate to a lot of what you're saying there, and I find I like to explore these kinds of things because there are high, if you reflect back on when, on younger Stayci, let's say you're entering the workforce, like me, it sounds like, you don't know necessarily what you want to do. You're not fully aware of what your strengths are, but you want to be there already. Wherever there is, you want to arrive.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really get this until my 40th birthday, which was a few years ago. I'm 43. That it's this whole process of becoming, which I love Michelle Obama's book, by the way, Becoming. Totally recommend that, anyone who wishes to pick that up. And that whole notion of you don't stop evolving. And it's all of these experiences, some of what you've already reflected on, that help create, help get us to where we are today. And without those, as cheesy and as cliche as it is, you wouldn't be who you are, be able to offer the service that you offer. So I think, so for younger listeners who want to be there already, because I do a lot of speaking events at local universities, and a lot of really eager, high achieving young women who want to arrive, and it really is a process of discovering what you love and what you don't love.
That's sometimes but you can't tell that to somebody who's young.
No, I know.
You can't. Like, I get it now. But
yeah.
If you want to say it to younger Stayci, it's still not going to work.
No.
I think if you want to, because everything you're saying has complete value, I think maybe the way younger Stayci would have taken it would have been if you can arrive and you can be there, but you're just going to be there a whole bunch of times.
Right.
You're not going to be there and be done. So
right.
The whole life's a journey, enjoy it. I hate when people tell me that. Because I'm not a journey person. I'm not about the car ride. I'm about the destination.
Right.
So, but if it's changed into the life is about the enjoyment of a bunch of destinations, and to stop and enjoy the destinations. There's just going to be a lot of them versus this unconsuming, untangible journey of how long is it going to take me? Like I'm a control freak. I need to know how long it's going to get, I can't just be in the car forever.
Life's about the enjoyment of a bunch of destinations.
Yeah. Don't tell me to enjoy the journey. I'm much of a control freak for that.
So, considering where you are in your life right now, at this arrival, at this particular destination, what does success look like and mean to you? How do you define that?
It's a tough one. Last year was a really great year for me. It was also a very tough year. And it's first world problems tough. So I was fortunate enough to win 40 Under 40, which is an award in Ottawa given by the Ottawa Board of Trade and the Ottawa Business Journal. In addition to winning 40 Under 40, I was unrelated, fortunate enough to be profiled as a business leader in Ottawa. So, to me, that was almost cooler than the award. But the award was on my list of things to do and goals.
Yeah.
And I got the award, and then I kind of didn't really know what to do with myself. It's because I never really thought that I could actually win the award.
Right.
So when I did, I was kind of like, what do I, huh?
What does it mean now?
I was like floating, kind of.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of take a hard look and figure out what I wanted next. It's also tough because I'm a mom of two very young children. I've got a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. And I started my first full year in business was the year that we got pregnant with our second kid. And I remember saying to my husband, I'm like, I don't know if I can do this because I get really stupid when I'm pregnant.
Mommy brain, pregnancy brain is a real thing, folks.
Real thing. And I was like, I don't know if I can run a business and do this at the same time. And he looked at me and said, well, and he's an entrepreneur and he's done this back and forth 6 or 7 times since I've been trying. And he said, the first full year in business is the hardest. And you're going to be doing it while creating a human. Mm-hmm. So every other year in business should be a piece of cake. Like, thanks, honey. and it wasn't easy by any means, but it wasn't that bad. And, I think for me, it's also learning what's true to you. And for me, it's not so much in business, it's social. So a lot of people, they're like, how do you do it all? And the response that I always tell people is you just don't look at it. You just keep going. You don't ask yourself, how do you do it all? The details and logistics is I get up at 5:00 every morning. Because you can get a lot done between, 5:30 and 9 a.m. when the rest of the world wakes up. I could not do this without my husband because he's a amazing partner. And I joke, I'm like, we're 50-50. And I told him that story one day when I came home after a long day at networking. And I think it was out till like 11. And he looked at me and he said, I gave both kids a bath today. It was a 70-30 day. So and that's kind of what I'm getting at, is this whole sense that there is a balance, and achieving balance means success. I don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in a work-life pendulum. I believe that if you are truly balanced, you're not doing either one very well, to be honest.
I agree with you. I think the term work-life balance, it's an older term now. Language evolves, the connotation evolves in all words in our language. And I look at it more like a work-life blend. And the blend changes. It can change from day to day. It can change from week to week, year to year. And that depends on a whole bunch of factors, individual factors, family factors, work factors, all pulling on you at different, health factors, all pulling you in different directions at different times, not all of which can be controlled. So I completely agree with you. Something that a friend of mine said a few years ago to me, was pretty pivotal, and it stuck with me. She said, you can have everything, just not at the same time.
Yes.
And I was like, it was a light bulb. I was like, well, of course. What a dumbass thing that I was thinking, that I could actually have it all at the same time. And it was, I don't know if you have moments like that. It doesn't happen too often where something so simple it feels like a slap in the face, or something that profound, that completely changed my thinking on the spot and forever has changed it. And that was one of those moments for me.
And it's true. And that's why I say pendulum, because like you work life, like I think the balance came from, because I used to be a workaholic, and I, to be honest, if we didn't have the kids, I probably still would be. The kids are two little stopwatches that go off. On the days where I have pickup, they go off at 3:45 and everything stops, and that is my window to just, stop. And if I didn't have that to stop, I don't know, I'd probably just keep going, and it all depends on the day and what's going on. But I like that idea of you can have everything, you just can't have it all at the same time. And if you want to have it all at the same time, you can't have very much of it.
Yeah, I still, but then I don't think that's having what you want. That's
exactly.
Anyway.
Like if you're
equally unsatisfied in all areas, like that doesn't
to me, the term balance is saying equally unsatisfied.
Yeah.
You're not doing enough work and the kids aren't getting as much love. Congratulations, welcome to balance. Like who wants to be perfectly balanced? I'd rather have no work and spend time with the family, or have the kids in care and be working, And there's also that personal side as well that needs to be factored in.
Absolutely.
It's all elements that need to happen. But that whole idea of, and I think a lot of people, it's tough because there's a lot of, the whole idea of the people that go on the highest mountains and shout from the highest rooftops, in my opinion, tend to be spewing bullshit, because it's where they are now. So you can have, probably Gary Vee is the only one that doesn't really do this, but even he does it. You take a CEO of a Fortune 500 company and you put him on stage as a speaker, and he'll tell you the most important thing is your health. And you need to slow down and you need to think about you. And he is absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
However, he got flown in there on his private jet. He has a personal trainer. He has a guy who makes him food. He had, you know what I mean? Like, at his stage, he is accomplished and he can now focus on his health. Do I think that it's a good idea to tell business people that are starting out to focus on your health? Sure. It's not a bad thing to tell someone to focus on their health. But can you do that and expect to become a Fortune 500 company? I don't believe you can. I think that the people that they're at that state, in hindsight, looking back, they would have spent more time on their health. But that guy has hustled for years and not slept and not eaten and not seen his family to get where he is.
So had he done that in earlier years, he likely would not have achieved that success, which he's now able to share.
Exactly. So by getting on a big stage and telling people to make sure you're balanced, and you can be where I am, well, that's not actually how you got there.
And I do think that's unfair. I don't think that individuals who are doing that mean to be unfair and spew lies at all.
And they don't. And they're giving their honest feedback. If they could do it again, they would have made sure. But at the same time, like, no one in that audience is really going, but can I get to where you are if I do that?
Yeah.
You know?
And I think this is why I like having really honest, raw conversations, because I think that it's important for people to understand when they are setting goals, whatever stage they are in their life, when they're setting big ass goals like that they understand before they start, to the best that they can. We never know fully what the story is going to look like, right? But they understand what it is they're going to be giving up before they sort of embark on it, and having that fulsome kind of conversation. And I wonder, you know, the kind of CEO that you're referring to, whether that was a real story or a fictional one. It could very well be a real story. I think it's our responsibility, their responsibility, to be sharing the honesty that, you know what, these are the pitfalls associated with my path. I'm really happy with where I am now, but I lost a marriage.
Yep.
I didn't see my kids much, and therefore they're adults now, and I don't have that great of a relationship with them. I have an awesome company. I've got awesome employees. I've got great relations. All this, but this is what it took to get here. So you figure it out.
But my second wife and I are super happy because now I have lots of time to spend with her. You know?
Yeah.
So, but it's you're right. It's about being honest about those steps along the way.
Yeah.
Because especially now in this age, and I'm not. It drives me nuts when people blame things on social media, and it's probably also, you know, it's what I do for a living, so I'm a little defensive of it. But social media has always been here. It's just changed. So, like, I grew up in a very small town. It was 600 people. So when I did something wrong, everybody knew about it. So when I did something wrong and got grounded, my mom would go get gas and she'd have to hear about it from the gas attendant. The gas attendant would be like, well, so I heard Stayci did this and blah, 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 you know? So just because there's social media now where it's more broadcast doesn't mean that same shaming wasn't happening. And there was tons of people that were trying to portray the perfect family with everything together, you know, when meanwhile everybody knew that George was actually cheating with Cynthia and everybody in town knew, and they felt bad for poor Susie who pretended that everything was okay. Like it's that level of not being honest with yourself and the people around you that I think gets us into trouble. And I think as business owners, and especially women, so I used to do videos for the Businesswoman of the Year Awards, and I'm no longer doing them. I did it for 3 years and it was fantastic. But one of the questions that I'd always ask is, you know, how do you manage it all with kids? And then the last time that I asked that question, and I paused, and the woman had just told me that her husband was successful in whatever he did. So she had to take a lot of time off to work with the kids, or to be with the kids. And after I asked the question, you know, how do you manage it all? I think she had like 5 kids or something like that. I paused and I looked at her and I said, if I was interviewing your husband,
Wouldn't
would
ask
I
that
have asked him
question.
that question? And it was more of a question to myself than it was
Yep.
to her, to be honest. And she looked at me and she said, probably not.
No.
And from that moment on, I have vowed never to ask women how you balance and manage it all until I start asking more men that.
Yeah.
Because like I said earlier, my husband and I are 50-50 and some days 70-30 and I'm not the 70, but nobody goes to him and says, how do you manage it all?
Yep.
And it's not a slight on women. Some people should go to men and say, how do you manage it all?
Absolutely.
Because
absolutely. And fairly so. They deserve that just as well as regardless of gender.
exactly.
And
I
I think
think
the heavy work, they deserve that recognition. Yeah.
they deserve the recognition as much as women deserve not to be recognized for their role in a family. And I think you have to compare apples to apples. Like you said, your big goals might be different than somebody else's big goals.
Yeah.
And it all depends on what you want to achieve. And your level of success doesn't necessarily need to be somebody else's level of success. And
you bring up a whole bunch of interesting stuff. I recently had someone on the show called, her name's Joanne Lippman. She wrote a book. It was almost like an updated version of Sheryl Sandberg's Lean In. And it's called That's What She Said, What Men Need to Know and Women Need to Tell Them About Working Together. And it is, she talks, the introduction, I was reading her book, and as soon as in the introduction, I read a statement, and I was like, I know I have to have this woman on the show. And at that point, I reached out, and I continued to read the book, and she was subsequently on the show. And she says, we're on the cusp of a different kind of thinking and a different kind of conversation, and one where we really just need to be honest. Men and women need to be honest with one another about how we show up both at work and at play. And the research is fascinating. The research really speaks to why we still are talking about gender equity when it started so many years ago, and talks very openly and honestly about what women do even unintentionally to other women to hold us down. And I think the example that you just gave, well, that isn't holding women down. It just perpetuates the whole notion of women looking after it all. And we as women inadvertently do it to other women, and men inadvertently do it to women. And no one is trying to, everyone wants successful workplaces. Everyone wants successful home life. And it was a really cool conversation to explore what we can do, men and women can do differently in the work environment and the home environment, but it focused on work to start to make some much more than subtle impact in terms of equity. So I like what you just shared. But do you know that women are cut off in meetings 3 times more than men? I
would know, because every meeting that I'm in, I'm always cutting people off.
And there are always exceptions.
I know that I do it now. I had a friend be like, can you stop cutting me off? And I'm kind of like, when the mirror gets held up to you, you're kind of like,
yeah,
oh, sorry.
Yeah. A no interruption rule is a good rule to have.
They actually have, I don't know who started it. It was somebody, I think in Silicon Valley. They're called silent meetings. Have you heard of these things?
No.
So a silent meeting is where everybody goes in with their computer and the boss asks for solutions on something and you're not allowed to talk. And everybody gives their 2 cents and they plug it into a Word document. And nobody talks. And then the boss goes through and reads all of the solutions. And I believe that they're anonymously listed. And what it's set up that way so that people that are introverts can have their ideas put front and center, just like the extroverts. Because just because you're an introvert doesn't mean your ideas are crappier than the people that can yell it across the room. And I thought that was really interesting. And then I kind of self-reflected on it. I'm like, I wonder how many people I cut off that had a brilliant idea just because I felt comfortable in a room saying it and they didn't.
Yeah, inevitably it happens. I use that technique when I facilitate, but I just use regular paper and, I kick it old school. but as a technique, not the technique, but as a technique to gather information, it's a phenomenal way for what you just said. Some people though are more verbal than they are written, so that's what, anyway, when you're running meetings, there are lots of things to take into account in order to address the diversity sort of in the room. You said that you get up at 5 a.m. to be able to, to run your day in a way that's meaningful for you, that gives you satisfaction and fulfillment and achievement. Within that, do you have any sort of habits or rituals, whether it's exercise, whether it's reading? Like, do you have any sort of routine around any? I mean, I just saw your face. So those who are watching on Facebook, I can see this gave. She shook her head.
I'm a part of the 5 a.m. club because not because I want.
I just joined it, by the way. Today was day 2.
How's it working for you?
It's really awful.
Yes, it is. So I will send you
I'm doing a video blog on Instagram.
I will send you the link. There is magic tools to the 5 a.m. club.
Okay.
There's an alarm clock. It's about $150. And what it does is you plug it into, it doesn't have a light on it because there's alarm clocks you can get with that, but that light's not strong enough. This you can actually plug your side lights into.
Yep.
And it slowly rises over a 15-minute increment. See, there's a look on your face.
To naturally wake your body up.
So what you do is I have my alarm goes off at 5:05.
Yeah.
But the alarm, like the light alarm, is at full light at 5:05. So it starts off at 4:50 and it slowly turns on the lights so that subconsciously, and then that way when your alarm goes off, your brain has already been submitted to light for 15 minutes. And you could make it go 30 or even earlier than that, but the thought that lights come on at like 4:15 in the morning is just way too hard for my brain to compute.
That is genius.
Yeah, and it makes a huge difference. Huge.
Well, it does. Our bodies are meant to rise with the sun and go to sleep with the sun.
Yep, and it has that. So there's a reverse. If you set the alarm in a certain sequence, it will slowly dim the lights for you as you're going to bed.
Gosh, I'm all over this.
And it makes such a huge difference, like massively. So full disclosure, I first started getting up at 5 to go to the gym when I had a full-time day job. And that would kind of work, it would not work. I'm not a big gym person, but I thought that if I got up, because I've never been a morning person. So I thought that I got up at 5, like the world would end, right? But it didn't. I was trying to see beautiful sunsets. And I was like, oh, the world didn't end. And then after that, I started doing my business on the side. So I started my business in 2014 in April on the side. So then what I would do is I would get up, I would go to the gym, and then I would go to the office and I would work on my side business from 6:30 until 8. And then I would do my day job from 8 until 4. And then I would go home, I'd pick up the kids, I'd be mom from 5 to 7. And then I'd work on my side job from 7 to midnight.
Wow.
Give or take.
Yeah.
And then as the side job got bigger and bigger, the gym got slowly pushed out. And then I just started getting up at 5. The logistical reasons behind it is because of the kids. My husband and I are both entrepreneurs, so we have a lot of flex in our schedule. So what we do is we both get up at 5 a.m. every day, and whoever is on pickup at 3:45, they are allowed to get out of the house and leave.
Right.
So whether that's going to Starbucks for 5:30, they just get to leave.
Yeah. No morning obligations as it relates to the kids.
Right. Because if you're going to end your day at 3:45, or if you're downtown at a meeting at 2:30, you need to start at 5 to get your full day in.
Yeah.
And then the other person, they can either get up or they can sleep in, or get in a couple of emails. Then the kids usually get up around 6:30, and then that person's responsibility is to get them off to school until like 9. By the time you get home, it's 9:30, and that person gets to leave the house at 3:30 and stay out until 5.
Right.
So that's how we divide it. So now the 5 a.m. club isn't for personal inspiration or for jumping into a cold pool of water like Tony Robbins does. It's literally the only way we can get a full days of work in and balance with the children. So that's our pendulum. And every Sunday we sit down and we look through, okay, you have a networking event that night. I have a thing in the morning. So you do pick up, I do drop off. And we try not to give each other too many doubles because you can't get a lot done between 9:30 and 3.
You can't, and then it's taxing in other ways as well, right? Yeah. It sometimes just because it fits in the day doesn't mean you can actually do it all with grace. And I know that very well.
Yeah.
I was, when my twins were born, I had a 2-year-old, and people will often ask me, how did you do it? And I'm like, you don't even want to know. You don't even want to know. And thankfully, I can't remember most of it, and they can't either.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, just because it does fit doesn't mean it should be done. So, but I love how you just shared that. I love how you shared, you
like
know.
I'm not doing the 5 a.m. club because I want to be Oprah and that I want to do yoga and meditation. Like that's
I am. That's what I'm doing. But my kids are older.
Exactly.
I was part of the 5 a.m. club when my first was born because that's when he rose every day.
And that's the thing. So when my kids do get older, I will very happily do the meditation.
Yeah.
Actually, no, I won't. I was
going to say, tell me when that happens because I don't know. I don't see you as the meditator.
I don't meditate well. I don't sit silently with my thoughts for a while. So one of the things that I started doing is I have a client that does isolation pod floats.
Okay.
So these are like the sensory deprivation tanks. Have you gone to these things yet?
No.
So it's in Ottawa. It's right downtown.
It makes me feel a little bit anxious, to be honest.
The claustrophobicness? You don't have to close the pod.
Okay.
So some people, like, this is their meditation.
Yeah.
And it took me, even after they're my client and I saw how relaxing and everything looked, it took me a while to go and do it because the thought of being alone with my thoughts for an hour and not being able to do anything kind of gave me like anxiety because I don't want to be in there just going over to-do lists for an hour.
Yeah.
But yeah, everybody's different. But yeah, the 5 a.m. club for me is out of necessity, not out of some greater purpose to become a giant CEO.
Yeah. And mine isn't either. It's funny because the expectation I have found since starting my own business is that people assume that I want to grow it and hire and have a team and make lots of money. That's not it at all. That's not it at all. I'm looking for more flexibility and connection with my kids, connection with my family, and I get to choose the people that I work with. I get to choose the work that I say yes to and choose the things I say no to. I mean, and that's speaking quite broadly. Sometimes you take work for different reasons, but you know, it is for simplicity.
Mm-hmm.
And while owning your own business, there are more things that I have experienced that I had anticipated, as there is with any experience. It is far simpler because it's not as noisy in my mind. I experienced a lot of what you were saying earlier in the conversation. I was challenged with working alongside people who just were okay with work that was good enough. And I don't want to just do good enough.
I had a manager that used to tell us, done is better than good.
And
right?
You know, yeah.
And like my coworker used to shudder at that because he was a perfectionist.
Yeah.
Done is better than good.
And I think that sometimes that's the case, but it is not
done
my
is
mantra.
Better than perfect, but I mean,
yeah.
Good, like it's a low bar. Right? Perfection is an absolute productivity killer. Don't get me wrong. Like perfection is hard, but good, like great or awesome, right? Like good.
Totally agree. I love it. I'd really love to hear from you now what your take or your advice would be for someone who's listening right now, who's sitting on the cusp of, you know, do I go out on my own? Do I start my own business? Because I'm feeling something inside me that's driving me to entrepreneurship. How would you guide them? What would you say to them if you were their mentor?
Right now, it's very sexy, entrepreneurship. I don't know why, but it is. So my favorite way to communicate things is analogies. And one of the things that people ask me, when are you ready to have kids? And my response to that is take your pet, if you have a pet, for 2 weeks, anywhere that you go, you have to take your pet. If you're not allowed to take your pet, you have to pay someone $10 an hour to watch your pet. You can't wake up the pet when it's sleeping. And at nighttime, if you want to go to the store and get Doritos, you have to stay with somebody has to stay with the pet. And if you like that lifestyle after 2 weeks, then you're ready for kids. So it's not about the thing, it's about how it changes your life. So I would say if you want to be an entrepreneur, the second thing to do is to read the E-Myth. Have you read that yet?
No.
Oh God, read that.
All right, put it on my list.
Yeah, read the E-Myth. So what the E-Myth goes through is that there are 3 mindsets of an entrepreneur. Of a business owner. There's the entrepreneur who thinks big and has big ideas. There's the manager that actually gets the stuff done. And then there's the technician, that manages and organizes it all. And then there's the technician. That's the person that actually does it. So it tells a story about a baker. And most businesses are started by technicians. Okay. It's started by somebody who's really passionate about doing a thing. And they fail because they either don't know how or don't want to do the other 2 things. Right. So I interviewed a woman once and, I said the 16-year-old self thing. And she said, I'd go into business making widgets. Just widgets. And I was like, what? She was a graphic designer. And she's like, you go into business to do the thing you love to do, not because you love to learn how to pay HST. And I think that unless you go to business school and you learn all those aspects of building a business, which most people that start their own businesses don't, it's social input. You're really good at making jewelry. You should make that a business. You know what? No, you shouldn't. Because you can't pay your mortgage selling jewelry. I'm sorry, you can't. It's not a thing that you can do. You can have an expensive hobby, but it's not a business. And I say this from experience because I used to do it on the side as a hobby. And then when you discover there's marketing and then there's packaging and there's this and there's this, then suddenly your hobby becomes it's just an expensive hobby. You're barely covering costs. You're not paying for your own time whatsoever. Yeah. And then you start getting in orders and you start making things. And sometimes it makes you happy. And sometimes you're a personal assembly line and it doesn't make you happy. So it's that whole idea of why you're going into business. Is it because you're good at a thing? Is it because people have told you you're so good at a thing that you should keep doing it? Well, imagine just doing that thing and not for your own personal joy, but for people. So now, you make custom dog collars. Well, now the one that you've made for that client, they said they want it in black. You're halfway through making it in black. They changed their mind. They want it in pink, but they don't want to pay any more money. So if there is a way, and I don't know what the analogy would be, like the parenting and the dog thing, but if there is a way to make your life, to test it. Right. And I think, I only know from my personal experience, but what I did was I didn't jump ship. I had a lifeboat. So I did the thing on the side for a really long time. And how I ended up going out on my own was not my own choice. My boss at the time, actually, she knew full well what I was doing on the side. And she said, this thing on the side's getting a little big. I was like, I can still do it. Everything's still fine. And she was like, you're a major sponsor at an event at the biggest conference center in town. And I was like, do you want free tickets? And she essentially shoved me out of the nest. And I came home and I said to my husband, like, this isn't a me problem, or this isn't a boss problem. This is a me problem. Mm-hmm. So this is going to continue to be a problem at any job that I go to. So either we go for it and I put everything behind it and it's the last job I ever have, or it fails miserably, I crash and burn, and it won't be a problem for the next boss. Yeah. And there hasn't been a next boss. And then you get to the point where you're unemployable and you're just kind of screwed.
Yeah, we won't delve into that.
Yeah.
So I think that's great advice. So the few things I took away from that, one was, asking why do you want to do it? You talked about the book E-Myth, and then test it. And so I'd really like to encourage any listener who is teetering on the idea of entrepreneurship to explore those options. So in your moments of self-doubt, because those exist in every human being, and I think they exist, in leaps and bounds, exponentially greater in people who own their own businesses. What do you do in those moments to get yourself out, muster on through it? What do you do in those moments?
I sit in traffic. People that have real jobs have to sit in traffic. And people that are entrepreneurs schedule their lives so they don't have to be in traffic. And then when you're in traffic, you're reminded that this is something that you have to do every day. And I basically put myself in situations where I'm not in control, and that when I have a bad day, I go to the job board, and I shouldn't. And I know that I shouldn't.
Yeah.
And if I was to go back and be an employer right now, I would feel so sorry for my boss. So sorry. But there is a time when I won't want to be an entrepreneur anymore. And it's taken me a while to learn that that's not failure. That's okay.
Yeah.
I'm just hoping that the experience that I gain from running this business will be able to afford me being hand selected by someone to put me in a place higher up in an organization that I wouldn't have been able to work my way up to.
Right.
And still have a great level of autonomy to do so. But yeah,
So
as far as what to do, I just try to put myself in all of I have to remember, I don't remember why I do it. I remember why I don't do the other thing. I'm more of aspiring to things doesn't work. I have to push against the things that I don't want to do to elevate me forward.
This is a really, really bad HR story that I'm going to share with you. So I was part of an HR team that the company was going downhill, and it eventually went under. But while it was on its downwards steep hill of decline, the HR team, we were small, but we were still trying to motivate one another to at least have things ready so that when and if it did turn around, we had some programs and initiatives ready to go on the way up. And the only way that I could get motivated to do the stuff was my teammates told me that if I didn't do my stuff by the next week, each time, we'd have weekly meetings, that they would make me eat Timbits. And I did not want to eat Timbits. At that time in my life, I was like really obsessed with working out and rigid eating, which is a whole other story, but that got me to do it. So not really a really good HR technique that most HR functions will try to endorse, but it is a thing and it can work at times.
No, it makes sense. I saw a great TED Talk by the guy who wrote Tim Ferriss, the 4-Day Workweek.
Yeah. And
he says that he doesn't do goal setting, he does fear setting.
Interesting.
And what's the worst that could possibly happen, and come up with what could happen, and then come with solutions out of that. And because a lot of people, psychologically, it's easier. They won't necessarily go for what they don't know, but they will repel against what they don't want there.
Human nature. And such a negative way to end things, because we do have to wrap it up. I'm going to end on one thing, and then I'll say thank you to you. I do want to end on something that you shared that I loved. You said life is about the enjoyment of a bunch of destinations. So thank you for sharing that with us, and all of your wisdom and your story over the last hour together. I really appreciate your time and value all of what you shared.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And as always, I'd like to thank all of you, my loyal listeners and followers, and remind you that information about my radio show, All of my guests, including Stayci Keetch, can be found at louisehreed.com. Also there, you will find in the show notes how you can reach Stayci, her website. And finally, a big shout out to my producer. As always, lots of love to Cameron Steele at Contact Talk Radio Network. I'm here, as you know, each week to highlight and showcase people who are taking brave, bold action and whose actions have a positive impact in our world. With that said, I'd like to encourage you to be brave, be bold, and be happy. Until next Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm Louise H. Reed, wishing you all an amazing day. Goodbye, friends.